My name is Major Molly Martin. I'm 35 years old, and yesterday I buried the only man who ever truly saw me beyond my uniform. Just 24 hours after the honor guard folded the American flag and placed it into my shaking hands, I returned home and watched strangers treat my life like it was theirs to take apart. My father-in-law, Raymond, stood in my living room directing his sons while they hauled out my grandmother's armchair. His tone was sharp and icy. "The family belongings need to come back to the bloodline, girl. Your time here is finished." My mother-in-law, Patricia, gave me a smile that looked warm but felt cruel. She picked up our wedding photo, slid my picture out, and tossed it straight into a trash bin. "We'll keep Marcus's photo," she said lightly. "He doesn't need you in the background anymore." They acted like my role in this family had ended the moment the burial ceremony did. What they didn't understand was that they weren't pushing around a helpless widow. They were walking straight into a plan my husband had prepared long before this moment. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever felt like a stranger in a place that was supposed to be yours. Charleston's air feels alive. It's thick, humid, and clings to you like a layer you can't peel off. After the funeral, after the final salute, after the sound of taps echoing through the heavy air, I couldn't bring myself to go home. The silence waiting for me there would have been unbearable. So I drove back to the base and spent the night in my office, surrounded by government-issue furniture and the cold comfort of routine. It wasn't a place for grief, but it was a place where duty still made sense. By morning, I felt steady enough. I put on my uniform, my regular fatigues, not my dress blues. It felt like putting on armor. When I pulled my Jeep onto our quiet street lined with old oak trees, sunlight came through the Spanish moss and soft patches. It looked peaceful, almost serene. But the moment I stepped onto the brick path leading to my front door, something felt wrong. The door was slightly open. I never left it open. Out of habit, I reached for my keys, slid one into the lock, and pushed. Nothing. I tried again. Still nothing. My key to the home I'd lived in for 8 years, had been made useless. They had changed the locks. A hard, cold feeling spread through my chest. I straightened my shoulders, took a slow breath, and rang the doorbell. The cheerful chime inside felt like it was mocking me. After a long moment, the door creaked open. My brother-in-law, Timothy, stood there shirtless, holding a half-eaten bag of chips. He didn't look shocked or sympathetic. He looked irritated, like I'd shown up selling something he didn't want. "Oh, it's you," he muttered through a mouthful of chips. He didn't even step aside. I had to walk around him to enter my own house. Then I saw the living room. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a site being cleared out. Raymond stood in the middle of everything like he owned the place, clipboard in hand, pen tucked behind his ear, barking orders at 2 movers I'd never seen before. The room smelled like thick Charleston humidity mixed with the cheap cigar he always carried. He glanced at me without a trace of compassion. "You're back earlier than we thought," he said flatly. "No, I'm sorry." "No, how are you?" Just cold practicality. "We're continuing with the transfer." That word, transfer. Like he was talking about closing a military facility instead of tearing apart the home where Marcus and I built a life. A home where we celebrated holidays, hosted friends, and held each other before my deployments. Then a voice drifted down from upstairs, sweet but poisonous. "Well, look who finally decided to show up." Patricia came down the stairs holding my jewelry box, the simple wooden one Marcus bought for me at a craft fair in Ohio. She opened it and looked inside with mild disgust. "These pieces are so plain. Molly, honey," she said in her thick southern drawl, "are these standard issue?" "You can keep them, of course. We don't need them." My breath caught, but I stayed silent. Her eyes then shifted to the wall above the fireplace. My wall of honor, my framed medals, my bronze star, my purple heart, my commendations from tours she couldn't even pronounce. They were symbols of the years I'd given, years she had never respected. Patricia wrinkled her nose. "Gerald," she called to her other son, busy taping up a box. "Take those down. They don't go with the look of the house." It hit harder than any blow I'd ever taken in combat. This wasn't about style. This was about wiping me out of this home piece by piece. No trace of Major Molly Martin left behind. Their disrespect toward my service, toward everything I'd survived, cut deeper than the new locks on the door. Finally, I felt my voice rise. Calm, firm, controlled. Not the voice of a grieving widow. The voice of a commander. Raymond turned around slowly, almost theatrically. He pulled the cigar from his mouth and looked me over, stopping on my uniform with open contempt. "Listen here, girl," he said, his voice calm in the most threatening way. "Marcus might have married you, but that doesn't make you a Coleman. Blood decides that. This house, this history, everything here was built by our family. We're not leaving it in the hands of a soldier who can be shipped across the world at any moment." Every word he spoke hit like a deliberate blow, dismissing our 8-year marriage, erasing the love Marcus and I had, and belittling the uniform I wore with pride. He was reducing my entire life to something temporary, as if I'd simply been passing through. He must have recognized the anger building in my eyes because he stepped in closer and delivered what he clearly believed was his finishing strike. He gestured around the room. "You've got 2 hours to collect your personal items. Anything still here after that becomes family property and will be removed." It was a final notice. Cold. Clinical. Designed to cut. But my instincts took over. When ambushed, you don't rush in blindly. You observe. You think. You find the angle that gives you the advantage. So I didn't yell. I didn't break down. I didn't argue. Instead, I stepped back, leaned against the wall, crossed my arms, and let my expression go entirely blank. Then I watched. I watched Timothy tell a mover to take my grandmother's armchair, the one with the faded floral pattern where her head used to rest. I watched Gerald pull my medals off the wall, handling them with all the care of someone unwrapping last year's holiday decorations. I watched Patricia walk from room to room, pointing at things as if she were choosing items from a catalog. And I watched Raymond stand in the middle of the chaos like a man proud of the destruction he'd orchestrated. They believed they were looking at a broken woman, a widow too consumed by grief to fight back. They were wrong. They were being evaluated by an intelligence officer. I was noting every smirk, every insult, every item they took. I was logging their arrogance, their entitlement, their complete lack of shame. My silence wasn't weakness, it was surveillance, and it unsettled them far more than tears or shouting ever would. That armchair they dragged out? It was the last physical piece of my grandmother I owned. Watching it carried out the front door reminded me of the very first time I realized none of my history, none of who I was, mattered to them. To them, I had always been a mismatched piece of furniture, tolerated, shifted around, and eventually discarded. It hadn't started with the changed locks or the emptied shelves. The first blow came 8 years earlier, at a dinner table. I remember that night as clearly as a mission briefing burned into my memory. I had spent a week preparing. I'd bought a simple navy blue dress from a Charleston boutique, modest but elegant. I brushed up on local politics. I even practiced a few light stories about growing up in Ohio. All I wanted was to make a good impression, to show them I was worthy of the man I loved. When Marcus brought me into their grand colonial home, the silence struck first, thick and heavy. Then the shine. Everything gleamed. The mahogany table, the silver candlesticks, the polished floors. The house didn't feel lived in. It felt curated. We sat down for shrimp and grits, a dish I'd never tasted. Patricia began her interrogation disguised as hospitality. She gave me her stiff, polished smile and tilted her head. "Marcus tells us you're a captain in the army, dear," she said smoothly. "You command men?" "Yes, ma'am," I answered. "A logistics company." "Oh," she murmured, taking a dainty sip of iced tea. "That must be very loud." The word loud left her mouth like it was something contagious, something that didn't belong in her pristine world. The message was clear. I was loud. My life was loud. I didn't fit their quiet, old money image. Then Raymond stepped in, studying me the way he might review a report. "And your family's in Ohio?" he asked. "Yes, sir. My dad retired last year." "He worked in the steel mills," Raymond said. Not a question. A statement. One he'd clearly researched. "Hard work," he said, with the tone of someone praising a sturdy farm animal rather than a man who sacrificed everything for his family. Throughout the meal, they never asked who I was beneath the resume. They sifted through my background the way you'd inspect a used car, looking for defects. I left that night feeling like I had failed a test I didn't know I was taking. The scrutiny only grew from there. A week before the wedding, Raymond requested a meeting. Not at his home, at the Charleston Country Club, his territory of choice. He sat across from me on the veranda overlooking the flawless green golf course, surrounded by men in pastel polo shirts and neatly pressed khaki shorts. He didn't waste time. "I need you to sign a prenuptial agreement," he said, stirring his Arnold Palmer without even glancing at me. "It's just to protect Marcus's assets, the family's assets." I was stunned, but steady. "Raymond, I'm not marrying Marcus for money. I love him." Finally, he looked at me with a smirk. "That's what they all say. But your career is a high-risk factor. Deployments, war zones. A soldier's life is unpredictable. We can't have our legacy attached to that kind of instability." He wasn't worried about my safety. He was assessing my life like I was a volatile stock. But through it all, Marcus was my anchor. He saw the insults, the coldness, the dismissive looks. That night, after the dinner, he held me tight in our tiny apartment a world away from his parents' estate. "I'm so sorry, Mal," he whispered. "They just don't understand. They don't see you. All they see is the uniform." And he was right. To them it was a costume. To Marcus it was just one piece of me, not the whole. He knew the woman who loved stray dogs, silly action movies, and cried over emotional commercials. He was my one safe place in their endless silent war. I kept trying. For him. That first Christmas, I spent weeks knitting Patricia a cashmere scarf in a deep emerald green I thought would match her eyes. Every stitch was a wish for acceptance. When she unwrapped it, she smiled politely. "Oh my, you are crafty, aren't you?" She held it up once, then turned to their housekeeper, a kind woman named Eleanor. "Eleanor, this would look lovely on you. Consider it a Christmas bonus." Then she casually handed Marcus a small box containing a brand new Rolex. The humiliation was breathtaking. My heartfelt gift meant nothing. A throwaway. Watching the hurt flash across Marcus's face before he hid it, I finally understood. No matter how hard I tried, I would never be enough for them. I was always going to be the soldier, the outsider, the girl from Ohio. If you've ever had a gift, or a part of your heart, brushed aside like it didn't matter, hit like and comment, I understand. Let's see how many of us have felt that sting. For years I convinced myself I could endure their Cold War, that Marcus's love would be enough. But I was wrong. The Cold War became open fire on a warm summer night at a cousin's wedding. The night I overheard their true plan. It was 3 months before Marcus passed. The ceremony was held on one of Charleston's historic plantations, where the oak trees towered over everything and the air always smelled like sweet tea. The reception glowed under a huge white tent strung with fairy lights. Men in seersucker suits drank bourbon while women in bright floral dresses waved fans against the heat. From the outside, it looked like a postcard of Southern elegance. Like most perfect images, it was a lie. Patricia glided around with a champagne glass in hand, guiding me from group to group. At each stop, she'd repeat the same line. "Have you met Marcus's wife, Molly? She's a major in the army." With a tone that made major sound like I wrestled tigers for a living. I smiled, shook hands, answered predictable questions, and played my role. My smiles were my camouflage. After an hour of this, I needed air. I told Marcus I'd be right back and slipped out toward the gardens. The scent of magnolia filled the cooler night air. I found a stone bench tucked into a quiet corner and sat down, letting myself breathe. For 5 minutes, I wasn't Major Martin or the odd daughter-in-law. I was just Molly. When I finally felt calm enough to return, I followed the path toward the tent. As I walked past the side of the house, I approached a dark veranda, and then I heard it. Voices. Familiar voices. I froze. Raymond. His tone was low, almost gleeful, as he spoke to Gerald and Timothy. "When Marcus is gone," he said, "we need to move quickly. Dad's lawyer says a wife keeps certain rights for a while, but we can push her. Make things uncomfortable." I pressed my back to the cool brick wall, my heart pounding. "She's a soldier," Raymond continued, pure disdain in his voice. "She's used to relocating. We just have to show her she's not wanted. She'll leave on her own." A clean break. They were talking about Marcus's death, not as heartbreak, but as a step in their plan. Then Gerald added, eager and greedy. "The vet clinic is the real prize. I already spoke to Dr. Henderson. He's ready to make an offer as soon as it's available." My whole body went cold. They weren't just planning to push me out. They were already dividing up Marcus's entire legacy, the clinic he had spent his life building with everything he had. Timothy, always the one who followed instead of led, sounded uneasy. "But what if she fights back? What if she asks for something?" he whispered. Then a fourth voice joined in, and it shattered me. "Patricia." She must have walked up right then. She let out a soft, mocking laugh. "Oh, sweetheart, don't worry about that," she said, her voice dripping with poison. "What is she going to ask for? She came into this family with nothing but a duffel bag. She'll leave the same way. Leave her to me. Woman to woman. I know exactly what to say to make her remember where she belongs." My heart didn't break. It stopped. The air disappeared from my lungs. This wasn't dislike anymore. It wasn't judgment or snobbery. This was a plan. A cold, intentional, carefully crafted plan to erase me, to strip me of everything Marcus and I had worked for, and to take it all for themselves. The pretty party lights suddenly looked dim. The cheerful music felt twisted and cruel. I stood there, hidden in the shadows, listening to my own eviction being arranged like a business deal. I don't even remember how I walked back to the table. I don't know how I managed to smile at Marcus and say I was just a little tired. The rest of the night passed like I was watching a movie from far away. Every smile, every polite laugh, every clink of a glass looked like something out of a nightmare. The drive home was silent. The air inside the car felt heavy, thick with everything I hadn't said. Marcus kept glancing my way, his forehead lined with worry. "Moll, what's wrong? You've been quiet all night." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. The soldier in me stepped forward. I turned to him, kept my face steady, and delivered it the only way I knew how, like a mission briefing. Objective: complete takeover of all assets. The house. The clinic. I said calmly. staring at the dark road ahead. Method: psychological pressure to force me to leave voluntarily. Timeline: immediately after your death. Marcus didn't speak. The only sounds were the engine and the soft hiss of the tires on the asphalt. His grip tightened on the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. He didn't ask if I was sure. He didn't question me. He knew. He had always known exactly what his family was capable of. When we pulled into the driveway, he turned off the engine and we sat in complete darkness. Then he looked at me. The gentle, soft-hearted man I married was gone. In his place was someone I had never seen before, his eyes sharp, cold, burning with a fierce decision. "All right," he said quietly, every word edged with fire. "They've declared war. It's time we make a battle plan." He didn't waste a second. As soon as we were inside our home, the safe space we built together, he walked straight to the hall closet. Confused, I watched as he pulled out a worn leather briefcase I had never seen in my life. That night, our tiny kitchen, with its warm yellow walls and the familiar sound of the coffee maker, became a war room. Marcus set the briefcase on the table, the same table where we ate breakfast and paid bills. He clicked it open. The sound was sharp and final, like he was opening the first shot of a war he had quietly prepared for. "They've always thought I was soft," Marcus said, his voice stripped of its usual gentleness. Now it was steady, precise. "They assumed kindness meant weakness. They were wrong." He looked at me, and the intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. "I don't fight like they do, Mal. I don't scream or threaten or manipulate. I fight like a strategist." He pulled out a thick file. "I've been preparing for this for a long time, longer than you think." He told me the day his father cornered me at the country club, demanding I sign a prenuptial agreement, was the moment he realized this fight was coming. "It wasn't about protecting me," Marcus said, bitterness slipping into his voice. "It was about controlling you, making sure you always felt temporary." So he made his own move. He didn't go to the polished family lawyer on Raymond's payroll. Instead, he found Charles Peaton, a legal pit bull known quietly throughout Charleston for handling messy estate battles. His nickname was the Cleaner, because nothing was ever left to dispute when he was done. "I've met with Charles twice a year for the last 7 years," Marcus confessed. My jaw nearly dropped. For 7 years, this gentle man, the one who rescued stray cats and refused to kill spiders, had been quietly building a legal fortress around me. He spread the documents across the table, transforming our kitchen into a command center. "I diagnosed my family a long time ago," he said, slipping into his veterinarian logic. "They have a chronic, incurable case of greed. And this," he tapped the papers, "is the treatment plan. First line of defense. Defensive line 1, joint tenancy with right of survivorship." He explained how, with Charles's guidance, he had restructured the ownership of every major asset. The house, the clinic, the investment portfolio, all of it converted. "Think of it like a legal minefield," he said with a grim smile. "The moment I die, ownership transfers to you instantly. It bypasses the will. It bypasses probate. It bypasses them. They can't touch anything." Then he held up another document. Defensive Line 2, the Iron Will. It was a will drafted with military precision. Airtight, witnessed by a judge and a senior partner from Charles's firm, and notarized. Everything else, every book, every piece of furniture, every dollar in our personal accounts, was left directly to me. Marcus wasn't leaving one crack open. I was speechless. The sheer scope of his planning, his fierce, quiet protection, overwhelmed me. Then he reached back into the briefcase and pulled out one last item. A single, sealed envelope. "And this," he said in a low voice, "is Defensive Line 3, the nuclear option." He slid the envelope across the table. My name was written on the front in his steady handwriting. "That's not a love letter, Molly," he explained. "It's an indictment." For years, every insult, every slight, every dismissive look from his family, Marcus had written it all down. The date, the time, the exact words. He documented his mother's comment about my loud and temporary lifestyle. He quoted his father's obsession with preserving the bloodline. He recorded every time his brothers treated me like I wasn't worth noticing. The letter ended with one brutal final paragraph. "By treating my wife, a soldier who has given more to her country than you ever will to your own family, as the enemy, you have forfeited the right to be called my family. You have revealed your true values and I reject them. Therefore, you will receive nothing from me but my contempt." A single tear slipped down my cheek, burning hot.